You know, with all the noise and controversy in the news these days, it's hard to really get a good understanding of what's going on. So I went to the most reliable source I could to find the best information possible. Let's check it out together.
Canada has officially been ranked among the best countries in the world for motorists. But whoever wrote that article has never stepped foot in Canada in their entire life. The potholes this time of year are bigger than the one Hiroshima had in 1945, for fuck's sakes. The provincial flower of Quebec might as well be a road cone. Nobody from Berta knows how to go around a corner faster than 12 kilometers an hour. Hell, I saw a guy with BC plates sitting at a stop sign the other day, waiting for the fucking thing to turn green because the guy was higher than a giraffe's asshole. Speaking of which, the entirety of Saskatchewan has a DUI. You gotta pay $50 just to leave one of the provinces by road. Not to mention, none of it in Newfoundland aren't even accessible by road to begin with. Fuck, it's been said before, but Toronto is a 2.5 hour drive from Toronto, and that's on a fucking good day. And worst of all, I'm pretty sure that at least half the drivers in this country didn't even take a real road test to begin with. They just went and saw their third cousin twice removed at the DMV and got them to sign the papers off for them. The roads in Canada have absolutely gone to shit. But one thing that hasn't gone to shit is the merch over at Kopke613.com. We got thousands of 5-star reviews across all our products, so you know you're getting some quality Canadian gear that you can trust.
You know, I couldn't agree with this guy more. The roads in this country are absolutely terrible. And it just seems like there's more vehicles and bigger trucks. And why is rebuilding and maintaining the infrastructure never a priority to any government? Hopefully, we'll get some change. Don't even get me fucking started on the potholes. I used to fix those things. All we do is take a bucket of schmag, which is glorified tar, throw it in the hole, wait 5 minutes, cook it with a blowtorch for 5 minutes, look at each other for 5 minutes, and we decide that we somehow just fixed the road. Meanwhile, I gotta drive back over the thing every day to get back to work. 2 weeks later, the same hole's back, and it's usually even bigger. And we don't go back and fix it for another 2 years. Problem solved.
So have you noticed that Canada is just copying the U.S. playbook? Look at what happened in America. Biden had no chance against Trump, so they threw in an unelected Vice President, Kamala Harris, to secure their agenda. Now in Canada, it's the exact same thing. Trudeau was losing badly, immigration was becoming a crisis, and his popularity was tanking. He knew he couldn't survive the next election. So what happened? Boom, he resigned. And just like the Democrats in the U.S., the Liberals placed an unelected insider, Mark Carney, right into position. And guess what? Instead of people staying mad about immigration, they suddenly got distracted by the tariff drama, and it worked. People forgot the last 9 years of damage and started focusing on buying Canadian. But here's the real joke. Most of these people still have mortgages from American banks. You want to boycott the U.S.? Start with the interest payments you're sending straight to American lenders. It's honestly a brilliant move by the Liberals, but an idiotic one for Canadians to fall for. Are we really this easy to manipulate?
Mark forgot to delete this video from the internet of him talking about how amazing carbon tax is and all the additional value add taxes he can add on top of that. Let's have a listen.
In order to accomplish what we need is that there will be, for a period of time, a rising price of carbon, either explicitly, for a long period of time, either explicitly or implicitly through regulation, that has the effect of a steady increase in the price of carbon. And that's a bit akin to having a rising value-added tax over time, which flows through to a lot of prices. And so the question is, how do you lean against that in terms of achieving inflation? It can be done, but it has to be watched. I think the central banks are able to anticipate, and particularly with credible and predictable climate policy, it's easier to address that. And so that, again, now there's lots of reasons why you want credible and predictable climate policy for a Green New Deal. So
this is Mark's bread and butter, creating a carbon tax, continually going up. And now, magically, a month and a half before an election for the leadership, he says he wants to scrap the tax. Isn't that something else? And what will he replace it with? Something worse. It will be something worse, and he is just saying that for votes now to make you feel comfortable that you should vote for the guy on the World Economic Forum sitting there advising countries on a tool how to create more taxes and basically use fear, because he's not pushing this information in Saudi Arabia or anywhere in the Middle East for very good reason, but he knows that he can get some countries to fall for it. Let me know in the comments what you think of Mark Carney here on the World Economic Forum, the architect of the carbon tax for the world that he's trying to push in countries. And now this Rolls-Royce limousine guy he thinks he's just like everyone else. He wants everyone to believe he's just one of the normal guys.
He's just such a snake. I don't understand how he just slipped in there and nobody had anything to say about it. It's just absolutely insane. And does anybody know about this Rolls-Royce limo? I watched this thing that was talking about how it was essentially just a Lincoln that they put a really cheap body kit on. Bro, maybe he's not that bad. Maybe you need to give him a chance. He did show up in a Rolls-Royce. It was pretty sweet.
I am a time traveler from 2050 to remember these dates. On March 13th, 2025, Newfoundland, Canada gets buried with 312 centimeters of snow. Loss of power for 42 days, thousands of people perish. It becomes one of the darkest days in Canada.
Someone tell me that didn't happen and I missed it. I really hope. No, I'm just joking. There's no way that happened.
I am from Canada, and we don't have racism there. We decided not to. I know you guys kind of went the other direction on that. Part of the reason we don't have racism is climate, right? It's a climate situation. Canada's cold, right? The KKK, they wear sheets. You couldn't do that. You can't wear a sheet in like Winnipeg. You freeze your ass off, you die. You'd have to wear blankets. It's impossible to hate anyone when you're cozy. You know who hates that joke? Canadians. They're like, we have racism. I'm like, all right. It's a weird thing to be defensive about, but yeah, all right, sure.
Mark Carney's values are for sale. Carney is best known as Carbon Tax Carney, and for good reason. Because for years, Carney has been arguably the loudest global cheerleader for the carbon tax.
On the carbon price, we're demonstrating leadership. For example, here in Canada, the carbon price path, price of pollution, I don't know the polite way to say it, but the carbon price path out to $170 by 2030 is exactly the right policy.
It is as important that the government has set out this path for the carbon price out to $170 by 2030 with the rebates for Canadians.
For Carney, the carbon tax is more than a policy. It goes to the core of who he claims to be. So much so that Carney prominently featured the carbon tax in his book entitled Values, Mark Carney's Values. In Values, Carney wrote that the carbon tax is one of the most important policies of our lifetime. According to Carney, Trudeau's carbon tax is a model for the rest of the world. But now that Carney is running to be Prime Minister, he's suddenly flip-flopped on his beloved carbon tax, telling Canadians that he would cancel Trudeau's carbon tax. This demonstrates that Carney's values are negotiable. They're for sale. So much for Carney's values. He's someone who clearly cannot be trusted. Carney will say and do anything to get elected. And consistent with this, while Carney is telling Canadians that he would cancel the carbon tax, he's telling radical Liberal Party carbon tax zealots that he would replace Trudeau's carbon tax with a new tax, an even bigger tax on key Canadian producers, costs that would be passed on to Canadian consumers. Carney can call this new tax whatever he wants, but what it really is a carbon tax, an even bigger carbon tax. Carney's claim that he would cancel Trudeau's carbon tax is nothing more than a cheap political gimmick in an effort to trick Canadians before the next election. But make no mistake about it, if Carney is elected, he would impose an even bigger carbon tax than Trudeau when he no longer needs your vote, but still needs your money. Only a common-sense conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre will axe the carbon tax on everything, for everyone, for good.
He's just such a snake. He's clearly got a hidden agenda. I think he's more concerned about what he can do for the World Economic Forum than what he can do for the everyday Canadian. And I don't think we realize how much influence he wields in these circles, but I feel like it's a lot. Now, that being said, I also don't trust a conservative government to do the right thing. Pierre Poilievre seems like a better choice, but he's not really saying a whole lot. He said what he will and won't do, but he doesn't say how he plans to make changes. And so few ideas I have heard have not been very clear, or some of them just sound unrealistic, to be honest. Like, I don't trust anybody. I think it's all about finding the lesser of all evils, and I hope that we can get, at the very least, that. Bro, don't fool yourself. They're all public servants with their own agendas. How many of them do you really think care about the everyday Canadian?
Maybe I'm foolish, maybe I'm blind, thinking I can see through this and see what's behind. See what's behind.
I was glad to have Linda this morning finally say that there are live ETs on Earth at this present time, and at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. An investigation was launched into this whole subject, and a document was prepared which concluded that at least 4 species had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. And this is my own view at this stage as well. The survival plan for the human species as an aide-memoire, and I name 5 different species here. I'm aware of more now. As a matter of fact, I saw a document just a few days ago that mentioned 20. And I think you, Mr. Chairman, were interested in some of the places they might come from. And I have in here Zeta reticuli, R-E-T-I-C-U-L-I, reticuli, the Pleiades, Orion, Andromeda, and the Altair star systems. So I don't think we can any more refer to them as they, because they're not an amorphous mass. They are different species and consequently may have different agendas. I don't think we can say that they all have the same agenda any more than we could say that the United States, China, and Russia had the same agenda. Our real interests may be very similar, but as of now, our perceived interests are still quite far apart. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working with, first of all, he was scared out of his skin, but after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally they became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs in Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force and sharing technology.
Is it me, or does it just seem like Canada is the only country that doesn't really have much of an alien agenda? Now, I heard this clip came out somewhere in early March, which is kind of the same time that Mark Carney kind of came out of the blue, right? And I feel like it was almost meant to be a bit of a distraction that just really didn't take shape. I've seen this guy before on the news talking about this stuff, and he seems to only pop up when there's something else going on. So I honestly feel like this was meant to be a distraction that just didn't hit. Why would the aliens want to talk with any of the leaders we've had for the last 20 years?
Politicians in Canada get a lifetime of cash in the form of a pension if they only serve 6 years in a position. Here's a list of politicians that are set to get a pension for life if this costly coalition lasts till October of 2025. There are 2 prominent names here, Jagmeet Singh and Stephen Guilbeault, a convicted criminal. We all saw Singh puff his chest and say he's going to dissolve government if the Liberals didn't push forward with a national pharmacare. Wow, we all know that that is absolute garbage, and there's no chance in hell that Singh would risk cash for life for us Canadians. While it takes almost all Canadians 50 plus years to get a pension, and a lot of us won't even get one, it only takes 6 years for these politicians to get cash for life. The Canadian real GDP per capita have been falling off a cliff for over a year and a half now. This is exactly what's happening. Imagine you go to a lake and you see a group of people barely able to keep their head above water. You're able to save all of them, but you have to give up your pension. Well, we know what this government has decided to do. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Thanks for watching.
What happened to the NDP? I felt like they used to at least have their intentions in the right place. And ever since Jagmeet took over, it's just been all downhill. And I thought he was a very strong candidate when he first came out. But he's just as corrupt as the rest of them. And he tries to bury it in this persona, and it's just so fake. I just wish there was something more the average person could do to make a difference. You can vote and protest. Vote, vote, and protest. Vote and protest. Vote, vote, and protest. Convoy, vote and protest. Vote, vote, and protest. Convoy, vote and protest. Vote, vote, and convoy.
Jagmeet Singh just sold us out again. Listen to what he had to say.
To vote down the government at your earliest opportunity. Do you still stand by that statement, and do you think now is the time for an election?
Now is the time to put workers first. We're literally in a trade war. And I can't imagine any opposition leader that wouldn't want to support a package to help workers impacted by this. We did that during the pandemic. We came together. We need to have that same approach now. So my answer to that is we need supports for workers first, put in place working, an election afterwards.
I knew he was going to do this because history always repeats itself with him. You want to know how I knew? It's because he is paying the price for protecting Trudeau. And he's protecting his pension, which he's gotten, and he's protecting himself because they are just getting annihilated at the polls. The Liberals, the Conservatives, they've taken voters away from him. His favorability is going downhill. And based on the last year's financials, which were made public, the NDP is fundamentally bankrupt. They had less than a few $100,000. Their base is declining, and they lost half of all voters that would have voted for them from December to January in 1 month. Jagmeet cares about one thing and one thing only, and that's holding on to what little power he has because the NDP is at risk. They're going to lose a bunch of seats in the upcoming election, and they're projected to eventually lose that complete party status. Unreal.
Yeah, he's always just saying one thing and doing another. I don't know what else to say about him. He's definitely just as crooked as the rest of them.
Just as I predicted, today, Mark Carney announced that he will pause Trudeau's carbon tax until after the election and then bring in a much bigger tax that has no rebate. Mr. Carney has been Justin Trudeau's economic growth advisor, who's been saying for years that not only does he support a consumer carbon tax, but that he thinks the tax must be much higher. Now, before I get into the details, let me address a little tax trick that he has planned. It's kind of clever. He's announced that he will pause the carbon tax for a few months right before the election to trick people into re-electing the Liberals. After the election, he will bring in a much bigger carbon tax when he no longer needs your vote, but still needs your money. He has said that this bigger carbon tax will only apply to businesses. Well, that's how it is now. When you fill up your tank today, there's no CRA tax collector standing there waiting to collect it from you. It applies on the wholesale industry, which passes it on to the retail vendor, who pass it on to you. Now, that is what he will do again, only this time it will be a much bigger tax, and he has admitted there will be no rebate to pay you back the cost. He has called it a shadow carbon tax. Listen in.
We need to use effectively a shadow carbon price.
You know who will love this idea? President Donald Trump. Mr. Carney's new and bigger tax on Canadian lumber mills, steel mills, factories, and aluminum plants will force them to leave for the United States. Here we have the threat of U.S. sanctions on our industry. And Mark Carney thinks now is the time to hit our businesses with higher taxes? You can picture President Trump calling our businesses and telling them to move south of the border, where there is no carbon tax and where other taxes are dropping. Carbon tax Carney will give you a pause in the Liberal tax for a few months just to get through the election. And then he'll bring in the mother of all carbon taxes, a job-killing, inflationary carbon tax that will drive jobs into the hands of President Trump.
But I don't trust him anymore either. I don't trust either of them. I don't think we have a good choice right now. But something's got to change. He just keeps saying the same thing over and over. He's got to be legit. Politicians never lie.
There's music in this room right now. You don't hear it, but it's here. If I brought in a little transistorized radio and turned it on, you'd hear the music. Did I invite the music in, or did I tune into something that was already here?
When we think about something, good, bad, or indifferent, that energy that we release, we are going to take on an equal amount of exactly the same kind.
You've got to get on the same frequency as the good that you desire is on.
If you don't like what you're getting back in your life, I'm going to ask you, have you examined lately what you're putting out? If you can understand that every thought changes your state of vibration.
See, one of the laws of the universe is vibration. Everything vibrates, nothing rests. Everything from the electron to the universe is in a state of movement. Before you speak, I'll hear. Don't expect God to do for you what God can only do with and through you. Powerful line.
If you're a Canadian, this might be the most important post you see today, so lock in. It doesn't matter if Trump puts tariffs on Canada today, tomorrow, next week, or next month. What's clear is he intends to spend the next 4 years messing with us. So it's time for Canada to toughen up and be ready for what's coming. Our leaders at all levels of government will talk about fighting back, and you can be assured that whatever they do, we'll complain about it.
It's not enough. Oh, fuck Trudeau. Wah, 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 wah.
There are some things our government can do, but we're the small dog in this fight. 1/8 the population and 1/12 the GDP of the United States. It's not a stand-up fight we can win. And while we can't slug it out, we have to remember that we're only in this fight because we have a lot of stuff the Americans want. $438 billion worth. $117 billion a year worth of oil, $22.4 billion in petroleum gas. 1/5 of all of our exports are either cars or car parts. And that's not even mentioning all the electricity they buy from us. 33 terawatts. And that wasn't even a great year last year. A few years before that, it was 57 terawatt hours. Whenever it gets too hot or too cold in the United States, the reason they can keep the lights on is Canadian power. Trump's plan will make everything from Canada more expensive for American consumers. Higher prices means lower consumption. Tariffs will be hard on Canada. And here's the point. We have to be able to take it. We have to show some of that Canadian toughness and fortitude that we claim is a key part of our personality. Because let's be honest, we've gotten pretty whiny. Imagine we were British people during the Blitz, blaming the Prime Minister for every German bomb that falls. Soft, demoralized, and we are hopelessly addicted to social media. But this is our chance to knuckle up. When the tariffs or whatever other horror show Trump dreams up happens, soldier on. If eggs are $12 a carton, eat something else. If gas is $10 a liter, start walking. And most importantly, when your neighbor loses their job, be there to support them. No more whining. Wartime life, people. You say you love Canada? It's time to prove it. Stand up for your country. Stand up for your neighbors. Show them that we can take whatever they throw at us. Never let them see us sweat.
It's one of those things where it's like, you've all got that friend that tells you how it is, whether you like it or not, and it's just blunt, blatant, and to the point. That's the cold, hard truth. I didn't like it at first, but I agree. Right on. That's all we got for today. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment. I'll hit you back. Share it with your friends. Let's spread the word. Everybody needs to get out and vote.